Hello and welcome to an introduction to focus groups. The focus group is a method that's widely used in health research and evaluation settings because it's efficient and it's amenable to a broad range of topics. The idea behind the focus group method is that the focus group process can help people to explore and clarify their views in ways that would be less easily accessible than in a one-to-one interview. In focus group, the role of the researcher is to introduce a topic and then facilitate the discussion between research participants by being actively encouraging and attentive to group interaction. Emphasis here is placed on the importance of interaction between participants because as long as the participants are addressing the topic of the discussion, then the researcher would tend to take a back seat, with the aim being to listen and to watch as the discussion between participants unfolds. That said, the researcher will still need to adopt an active role by guiding people back to the topic if they stray from the focus of the discussion, which can sometimes happen. Focus groups usually have between 6 to 10 participants. Anything above 10 participants can tend to get a little bit unwieldy and can be difficult for the researcher to manage. And focus groups tend to take longer than interviews, so you need to schedule around about 1 to 2 hours for them. Anything longer and fatigue might begin to set in for both you and the research participants. Okay, so in terms of issues you need to consider, focus groups are often particularly appropriate when a researcher has a series of open-ended questions or a theme that they want to explore in more depth, and as such it's often important to produce a list of topics to facilitate the discussion. You'll also need to consider the location of the focus group because this should be accessible for the participants, make them comfortable enough to allow for group discussion. A quiet private space is often best because you need to be able to hear everyone's contribution and limit any potential distractions. Whenever possible, a researcher also usually provides refreshments such as hot drinks and cakes and biscuits, as this can help to make people feel at ease and it also helps to stimulate the discussion. In terms of participants, groups can be assembled so that you bring people together from different stakeholder groups to talk about a topic, or alternatively you might want to organise your focus groups so that those involved are natural groupings. Bringing different stakeholder groups together can have the advantage of broadening the scope of the discussion, but on the other hand sometimes it can be better to concentrate on natural groupings and keep the different stakeholder groups separate because any hierarchical relationship may influence group dynamics and serve to constrain some of the groups of people from being able to express their thoughts and feelings openly and honestly. Another consideration might be how you're going to record the focus group, and I would recommend using an audio recording device and also taking notes of the discussion. One of the greatest strengths of focus groups is that in interacting with each other, the conversations that participants can have often yield a greater depth of information than can be achieved through interviews. And as participants talk, you also gain insight into the issues that are relevant for them. Another strength of focus groups is that it allows you to observe how participants interact, how views are negotiated, and the ways that the views of some groups dominate and others are marginalised. So for focus groups, you're not just recording what is said, but you're also seeing aspects of the social order of groups and then using those observations to think about some of the consequences that that might have for your evaluation. And there are practical issues that you need to consider. So you often need two people to run a focus group, a facilitator and someone to take notes and operate the recording device. You might want to develop a topic guide for your discussion so that the points that you wish to learn about are covered, because this can help you to guide the discussion and to make sure that people remain focused on the topic. Some focus groups can be difficult in that you can get people trying to dominate the discussion or continuously interrupting, so it takes quite a lot of skill for the researcher to be able to guide people in a tactful and yet diplomatic way. And so how you're going to deal with that is something that you might want to think about before you start conducting your focus groups. And finally, as you might imagine, a 2-hour focus group will produce a lot of data that will take time to write up or get transcribed. So the time it takes for this is a factor that you will need to take into account. And that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to focus groups.